As a business casual gamer, it's easy to be intimidated when looking to pick up a new game. I've had my fair share of regrettable purchases, and I've become pretty cautious in terms of deciding what's worth the time and money to me. When I was younger, I enjoyed the long-term investment of games like World of Warcraft, but since then, my attention span has definitely shrunk. It's not uncommon for me to clock only 15 minutes on an otherwise well-esteemed game if the gameplay, story, art, something just didn't catch me right away. Games like Smash and Overwatch have conditioned me to seek those which are instantly gratifying, and a purchase becomes especially unlikely when I stray away from familiar developers and genres. Personally, simulations, rhythm games, and platformers are categories I typically sort of sweep under the rug, but following a couple clumsy months of Pokemon, I wanted to try anything that just felt good to play. Last week, I was on my way to PAX South to meet up with an old friend of mine. In the midst of the ache of an economy flight, wedged between a huge man whom I can only assume was Dirk Nowitzki and a lady with her slobbering, crying baby, I found refuge in Celeste. Its responsive platforming alone had me on board, as the attention to detail, music, and story pulled me further and further from the first world nightmare my physical body occupied. That whole flight, if I wasn't catching a Law & Order episode off of somebody else's phone, I was right there with Madeline and Theo. Celeste is not a new game. In fact, as I'm writing this, it just turned 2 years old. For those of you who don't know, Celeste is a game about climbing a mountain. I remember hearing about this game in early 2018, but at the time, I was just starting out a new school, and I didn't have a console or PC in my apartment. Like so many others, Celeste would evade me for quite some time. Nonetheless, the platformer finally found its way into my hands. For less money than my little brother spends on a Fortnite skin, Matt Thorson and Noel Berry's Celeste won me over like nothing has since Breath of the Wild. It's no secret that this game has incredibly tight mechanics. Madeline's 3-button control scheme is an experience greater than the sum of its parts. Her jump, chaotic dash, and precise climb combine with a perfect balance of lenience and punishment from the game world. Stage design pushes these systems beyond what you might expect. Director Matt Thorson has been working with level design for almost 20 years, and his mastery is on full display throughout Celeste's puzzles. It's common to think of level design in a purely aesthetic sense, but Celeste reminds me of the art and craft behind the function of each stage. The developer rolls out new mechanics and gimmicks pretty consistently, about once per chapter. However, throughout each chapter, you are challenged with not only tougher platforming, but also new logic when the game pushes you to rethink how to use the tools at your disposal. Although Celeste follows a pretty typical buildup of difficulty, it feels remarkable because it's so well coordinated with the player's developing skill, especially on a first playthrough. Challenges are often just barely out of reach, except when they're not, requiring you to actually improve to move on. This style of gameplay is not unique to Celeste, but personally I wish that I saw this in more games, because at the end of a Call of Duty campaign, it might have been a fun ride, but have my FPS skills really improved from when I started? Making the final push to the summit, I anticipated the hardest challenge yet, but instead, the game gave me an opportunity to use all the skills I'd developed to weave my way up the face of the mountain in a sort of flow-like state. It was tough, but above all, it was so satisfying and one of my favorite gameplay experiences in a long time. Lena Raine's composition and sound design enrich this moment as the music begins to high pass, reverberate, and eventually crossfade into the wind as you climb higher and higher. This design works to put you into Madeline's shoes as she ascends into thinner air. To say that Lena Raine challenged my preconceptions regarding ambient music would be a gross understatement. 2 for 2 with the Ratatouille references, baby. This synthesizer arpeggio in Madeline and Theo slowly evolves from a square wave to a triangle and sawtooth. It's first introduced under a bed of acoustic instruments, but continues to build in harmonic structure, becoming the distorted, twisted lead that we hear in Star Jump. The compositions alone are great, but the application of audio is up there with the best. Celeste seamlessly adapts its soundtrack as you progress and retreat through each stage. Here, I'm reminded of Skyward Sword's Skyview Temple, but honestly, Celeste takes it to a whole nother level. Lena's use of tone and timbre to control emotion is insane. At times, harnessing human biological fears, she uses sawtooth waves and stereo effects to build anxiety and panic. It's pretty rare for any media to so successfully take me from enchanting mysterious lows up to moments when I feel like I can't breathe. The emotional charge of Celeste's sound design goes hand in hand with its underlying themes of mental health and personal struggle. This game is one of the simplest yet most impactful works of fiction I've ever consumed, and that's not an exaggeration. If I could offer any advice to a new player, it'd be read all the flavor text and invest yourself in the story. This game has a lot more to offer if you do a bit of digging. I won't spoil too much, but through only 5 characters, Celeste tells a story of depression and introspection. Madeline brings to light a reality of the human condition which, I can tell you from experience, resonates with so many of my peers. One particular detail I caught on to was the expressiveness of Madeline's body language and how this subtly indicates her varying states of mind. There's not much I can say that hasn't already been said about the incredible dynamic of Madeline and her reflection, although I had my reservations about Theo. He's first shown as a goofy social media hopeful, but his dialogue with Madeline outlines a more real character who, personally, I connected with. Dealing with a fuzzy sense of direction in life, Theo is conflicted by his desire to adventure and build his own path, and his inclinations towards stability and the normal. He also mentioned that people often think he's intimidated by his older sister. I didn't really know what to expect at PAX South. To be honest, I'd never been to any convention before, despite growing up in San Diego. I met some cool people, sat in on a bunch of panels, set the world record in level 1 of Dodo Peak, and walked away excited to continue creating on this channel. Yet, whenever I had a moment, especially during travel, I had my nose in my Switch, getting my ass kicked on Celeste Mountain. As I've grown older, I've become much more of a casual, social gamer, but it's games like Celeste and Breath of the Wild that remind me of the potential of the medium and the people who pour their hearts out into every last detail. The animation of Madeline's pixel art hair alone, especially when she goes Super Saiyan, is honestly more impressive than the physical systems in certain AAA releases. Overall, I was blown away by how easy it is to clock 20 hours and 5,000 deaths. I'm about halfway through the endgame content, but eventually I'll experience all that Celeste has to offer. Congrats to Matt Thorson and his team for Celeste's 2-year anniversary. Thanks for having me, PAX South. Happy Valentine's Day, Mom. Didn't really write an outro.